We start this half hour in Ukraine, where the top American diplomat Antony Blinken is making an unannounced visit today. He arrived in Kyiv to meet Volodymyr Zelensky just days after Russia launched a surprise attack in the Kharkiv region, that effectively opening up a new front in the war. Well, our foreign editor, Kethevane Gorjestani, is with me in the studio because we are expecting Kethevane shortly to hear a press conference with Antony Blinken in Kyiv. Give us a sense, as we wait for that press conference to get underway, as to why you think Blinken has gone now to Ukraine.
Well, there are two things that explain this timing. One is, of course, those gains made by the Russian military in the Northeast, especially, and that a new push in the past few days. But it's also the first U.S. official to actually make the trip to Ukraine since that long-awaited supplemental package of $61 billion was passed by the U.S. Congress. So there's sort of a message of reassurance for the Ukrainians to have the U.S. Secretary of State come and say, we passed this. Some of the weapons are coming. Some are already on Ukrainian soil. More is coming, and it's sort of saying, we know you're in a difficult situation, but help is on the way. And that was really something that Antony Blinken was blunt about, whether it was over the weekend in interviews in the U.S. or now on the ground in Kyiv, where he acknowledged the fact that this delay for months waiting for that supplemental package was a problem for the Ukrainians, that it had put them in a very difficult situation. But he said, assistance is now on the way. Some of it has already arrived. More will be arriving. And yesterday, Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor, had also acknowledged that. He had put it even more bluntly, saying the delay put Ukraine in a hole, and we're trying to help them get out of that hole as rapidly as possible. So there's a little bit of an optimistic message from Antony Blinken in Ukraine to show that the U.S. is still there, is carrying on, it will continue, and they are going to be announcing yet another military aid package. Since that supplemental was passed, there have been already two packages, $1 billion in military aid right after the supplemental package was passed. Then last week, $400 million in military aid, and the U.S. announcing that by the end of this week, they're going to be sending even more weapons to the Ukrainians. The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, really focusing and saying what he needs right now. He said that he needs 2 Patriot battery systems to defend from that new onslaught in the Northeast. He says that's what he needs right now.
Kethevane, we're still waiting for that press conference to get underway in Kyiv. And while we do, if you'll permit me, I'd like you to speculate for me a little bit. We know the US elections are coming up. Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. Donald Trump could win that election, couldn't he? And if he does, speculate for me, what would that mean for US aid, do you think, for Ukraine?
Well, we saw that one of the reasons why there was this delay in Congress to get that extra aid was partly due to Donald Trump. There are two aspects to Donald Trump and to his supports within the Republican Party, which, it has to be said, is divided when it comes to supporting Ukraine. The sort of pro-Trump wing of the Republican Party held back on aid to Ukraine for two reasons. One has to do with Ukraine. Basically, they don't understand, or they don't see the benefits for the U.S. in helping Ukraine and sending so much money to Ukraine when they have to deal with things at home. The other reason was more of a political game, which was the border. And that was Ukraine was sort of the bargaining chip between the Democrats and the Republicans. So the question is, how many of those are going to stick to their ideological position of not helping Ukraine rather than what happens at the border? And the question also is how much the sort of old school mainstream Republicans, those who are the hawks of the Republican Party, who are opposed to Russia and Russia's influence, and who see aiding Ukraine as extremely important. I'm thinking, of course, of the likes of Mitch McConnell. These type of people are still in Congress for now, but you're seeing a sort of movement of the pro-Trump. Donald Trump hasn't made everything clear as to what he would do with Ukraine. He eventually supported this package in the end. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, wouldn't have done it if he had gone completely in opposition, probably with Donald Trump. So it's a little bit unclear, but of course it would be the clarity that Joe Biden would bring in the sense of continuing that support for Ukraine is something that you don't have with Donald Trump. This speculation is actually something that would be detrimental possibly to the Ukrainians. The fact that you don't know if the U.S. will continue to support you.
That's really interesting. Thanks very much indeed, Kethevane Gorjestani, for us there. We are still waiting then for that press conference to get underway in Kyiv by the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. We'll keep an eye for you on those live images coming out of the Ukrainian capital. We'll cross live there when Blinken does start to speak.